Welcome, everyone, to the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller. Happy to have you along here on a beautiful Tuesday. Usually I try to record these pretty early in the morning, but today starting off a little later, but that's okay. It'll still be out before 2 o'clock to be out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. So it won't mess up your routine at all, but happy to have you along here on Media Row. A lot to get to today. We're going to break down we're at the midpoint of the Missouri Valley Conference basketball season. So we're going to look more into kind of what the writers got right, what they got wrong in their preseason poll to right now in the Missouri Valley Conference season. And there's one team that they were very wrong about that we're going to break down. And then on top of that, kind of talk about the conference as a whole. Then going into a little bit of the fun numbers and history between tomorrow's huge rivalry game between Drake and UNI at the Knapp Center, 6 o'clock. I'll be there, so make sure if you're going to stop by, say hi, and to just follow along on Twitter at Media Row or at Justin_C Miller. So make sure to follow along there, but we're going to go through kind of the history and the numbers and also of just the great success UNI has had throughout this time. And even with that success, this is one of the best rivalries in the conference because of how even it is. Even when Drake has droughts, they've been able to compete with some really talented UNI Panther squads. And then vice versa. When Drake had some really talented squads, UNI was able to still compete even though they were in rebuilding years and such. So kind of go through that, and then to talk about kind of why I'm starting a little later today for this recorded podcast is because yesterday I mentioned at the end of the show that I'm trying to get a really special guest on to talk about the Drake UNI game, someone who has experience being on the floor going up against the Purple and Gold Panthers, and I got him. And I won't say who it is until the end of the show, so you have to stick around and make sure you get excited. He's one of my favorite players. I've interviewed him a couple of times. He was actually, here's maybe a hint, he was actually the first person I interviewed when I went to Drake a couple of years ago as a junior. He was the first person I interviewed and did a story about him. And so yeah, you'll have to stick around. Travis taught me that. That's called a deep tease in this business. So stick around and be sure to get excited as I am for the special guest we will have for tomorrow's podcast. But let's jump in to today's show because today will be fun. Missouri Valley Conference mid-season point. You have, of course, like we said yesterday, you have Bradley number 1, Drake at number 2. You have Drake winning 6 in a row, Bradley right now winning 5 in a row, 10-plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. Really impressive with UIC and Belmont, their offenses. Indiana State towards the bottom right now. Missouri State still winless in the conference. And just taking a look at the mid-season standings for this point of the year, and what the writers thought was going to happen at the preseason point. This article, this preseason poll, I should say, came out on October 2nd of 2024. And you had Bradley picked as number 1, not a big shocker. Northern Iowa at number 2, they were just a few votes shy of that first place spot. Murray State at number 3, Illinois State number 4, Drake rounding out your top 5, which Drake still, I remember sitting there, I was at iHeart still, sitting there on my computer when it popped up, and I remember running over to a couple of people and being like, does it feel weird that Drake, that just lost everything? The most experienced player coming back was Nate Ferguson, who came off the bench and maybe averaged 6 to 8 minutes a game. That's the most experienced player, and they're going to be a top 5 team in the conference. Doesn't that sound wrong? And the writers must have known something. Either the Valley Conference isn't as strong as what a lot of people maybe thought it would be, and you are allowed to have a team like Drake that brings in all these D2 guys, a D2 head coach, lost everything, only bringing back 2 players, one of them who never played, and you see Drake tied for second and really making a case to be the best team in the Missouri Valley Conference right now. And then you had UNI at 2. That's not far off of where they sit right now. UNI third in the conference. So that game tomorrow will be even more important because you have Drake number 2, UNI number 3. Illinois State and Murray State, they fall from being projected number 3 and 4 in the conference to 6 and 8, which isn't too far off. I mean, that's only a couple of spots. It's important towards the end of the year and seeding wise. Like, I'm not trying to make that case. I'm just saying for preseason to midseason, you're going to see fluctuation. The one team, though, I really want to touch on and talk about because the writers so far have been very wrong about UIC. UIC projected to finish last in the conference behind Missouri State, behind Valpo, behind Evansville. And right now, UIC is making a push. UIC right now is right there in the middle of the pack with everyone of Belmont as well. And why this team was probably projected last was just their performance from last year. 12-21. They weren't great at home, 6-9 at home, awful on the road, 3-10 on the road. They finished with only 4 wins in the Missouri Valley Conference. But now they sit in 5th place, 13-7 overall, 6-4 in the conference, 6-3 at home, 6-2 in true road games. So they are a team that has drastically performed better than they did last year. And it's because of how good this offense is. Now, they are the top rebounding team in the Missouri Valley Conference, and that's just their size. They play Bradley tomorrow night, which is going to be a fun game. And they may be one of the few teams size-wise that matches up fairly well with Bradley. But it's just, can that offense stay consistent? And can the defense get a few uncharacteristic turnovers and extra points on the board for the offense? But they're 3rd in scoring offense in the Missouri Valley, 4th in scoring margin. They're 3rd in field goal percentage. And they have one of the best kind of versatile guards in the Missouri Valley right now. Junior guard Javion Jackson. He averages 13 points a game, but we've seen what happens when he is heated up. He scored 30 points a few weeks ago in that double overtime thriller against Murray State, which at the time and actually right now still stands as the 2nd most points scored by a single player in a game this far into the Missouri Valley Conference season. But he only averages 13, but he can definitely get over that. It feels very much like how Sturtz right now, he does average 19, so he is up there. But at the early part of the season, we had talked about where Sturtz is averaging about 15, but it really felt like that dude could go off for 30-plus anytime he wanted with how easy it is for him to score. Javion Jackson kind of has the same feeling for me. Just very talented offensively. He is the guy. They try to get the offense to go through him, and then their 2 big men down in the paint as well. But so while they're top 5 in basically every scoring category, every offensive category, are great with passing the ball around and one of the top teams in terms of assists, one of the reasons I just don't have great confidence in this team making a deep run, come March, is just that inconsistency I was talking about. And I think you're going to see a team that we talked about it yesterday. I love watching those teams that are, all offense, don't really focus a lot on defense, or that's not their strength, is when they heat up towards March, because then it's really hard to fill out those brackets because you're kind of sitting there going, man, do you go with the hot team or do you go with what you saw for the most part of the season? And we brought up teams like Auburn, who went to the Final Four that, wasn't great during the regular season, but took down a great Kentucky team, took down a team I thought would win the national title in Tennessee, very much comparing them to that kind of squad. where they are just a great, talented offense, but the defense isn't all there. And you look at their defensive stats, they're 10th in scoring defense. They allow 76 points per game, but they score 77 a game. So they're only scoring 1 point more than their opponents, which is all that matters if you win, which they are. The teams shoot very efficient against UIC, shooting nearly 50% at 46%. And then in tight games, if it gets to the point of going to the free throw line, this was a head scratcher. You have such a good 3-point shooting team and a team that is just really good offensively. And at the free throw line, one of the worst teams in the Missouri Valley Conference. They shoot 68%. That has always blown my mind. And I'm going to sound like my dad here, but how that just blows my mind. Division I athletes in college basketball and the team as a whole is shooting under 75%. That's wild to me. And it's going to cause issues towards the end of the year. You've seen it time and time and again. You're watching conference championships, conference tournaments, NCAA tournaments, that free throws are crucial, are vital. And it could bite UIC here towards the end if they're allowing so many points defensively. And even if their offense is on, if it's a tight matchup and you get stuck in a free throw battle, they're a team you want to be in a free throw battle with because they're only shooting 68%. But so UIC, team projected last, now at the midpoint, sitting in 5th place, looking like a really pretty dominant team that can make a run. I'm still not confident in a run from them. I'm more confident in teams like Belmont that have a little more experience, and they just seem more aggressive defensively. While they're still not great defensively, they still, I think, have more defensive fire to them than UIC. But yeah, the Riders 12th for UIC, and now you have the Flames sitting in 5th place. And I was talking with my dad actually yesterday about this and like the preseason poll and how they really weren't far off. And what does that say about the conference? I mean, when you have a team like Drake that lost everything and you have them in the top 5, I don't think that speaks well to the conference as a whole. Now, I love watching the Missouri Valley. I think it could be anyone's night. And every team is very beatable. Drake, when they were undefeated, looked beatable, and they were. UIC beat them. Bradley has looked beatable. Illinois State nearly knocked them off. So every team is beatable, despite even the big dogs right now sitting on top of the conference. That being said, if you want to get 2 teams into the NCAA tournament, it is going to be really hard when you can have teams that lose everything be a top 5 team in your conference. It's just, it doesn't look well to the national spotlight. It doesn't look well to the, fans that maybe don't focus on the Missouri Valley as much. And, you have Drake, who got a little bit of help, with their strength of schedule now that they've beat Vanderbilt during that Charleston Classic Championship. Vanderbilt at home took down Kentucky, and that's going to help Drake tremendously. But, man, it still doesn't feel like it'll be enough because this just doesn't seem like a 2-bid conference. And I hate to say that because I love watching the Missouri Valley, but you're going to have to win it all. You're just going to have to win it in St. Louis. And I think last year with Indiana State not getting in, barely losing to Drake in the championship, and the year they kind of had, and you put in a team like Virginia over them, that right there was the moment I went, man, it is going to be a long time, I think, before we see the Missouri Valley be a 2-bid conference again. It's going to be a long time. But everything, I think, goes around. I think there will come a time where the Missouri Valley is a 2-bid league. I do. It's just going to take some time. And maybe it'll take, I can't remember, were we talking with Adam Emenecker earlier this year when he talked about, there's possibilities with the changing landscape of college basketball and college athletics of, the A-10 and the Missouri Valley joining forces together and merging conferences to build a bigger conference. And then you have moments like that where then it could become a two-bid conference as well. But that's deep in the future. That's not even something that's been truly talked about. Those are just ideas floating around. But Drake did get some help with that strength of record with Vanderbilt now beating Kentucky, who was a top 10 team. And real quick, can we talk about how the Vanderbilt home court, I've always thought, is that the worst home court in college basketball? Like, the stands look so far away. It looks like a high school gym when you have the cheerleaders sitting there on the court next to you. In the way it's formed, I mean, it looks almost like a wrestling match at that point. It just does not look like an intimidating atmosphere. And now they beat Kentucky, and that crowd can get loud, and the storming the court was cool, and I'm all for that. But man, that court just does not look good on TV. Does not at all. It's all I was really thinking about while watching that game. I was thinking, one, beat Kentucky because it helps Drake, and two, this court is ugly, is what I was thinking about. But so, yeah, that's kind of your Missouri Valley Conference midseason standings compared to the preseason. Like, comment any other teams that you think maybe were misrepresented earlier in the year. Maybe, a team that they thought was going to be really good and now is kind of sitting there. I mean, Murray State, they had sitting at 3rd, and right now Murray State is sitting at 6th. So maybe you have some arguments against that and why you think, they've been dropping as much as they are. But really wanted to hone in on UIC and give UIC credit for not listening to the media and just playing their game. And right now, off to a great start, 13-7, 6-4 in the conference, sitting at 5th place. I mean, they're an offense that is going to be scary, and that game against Bradley is going to be really fun to watch tomorrow night. Before we wrap up today's show, though, I want to touch on kind of the cool numbers of the history of the Drake versus UNI game, because tomorrow we have UNI heading to Des Moines to take on the Drake Bulldogs, number 2 in the conference versus number 3 in the conference, bitter in-state rivals. I loved going to these games since I was a kid. Covering them are even more fun. I mean, I told the story, I think, last week about me having 103 fever with J.D. Snover trying to call a game as a student broadcaster, and Bowen Bourne hits those 2 half-court shots to send it into double overtime. Drake ended up winning. But just great moments like that. You'll have always a great coaching matchup between Ben Jacobson. Now it's Ben McCollum, who's off to a great start, wonderful start. Drake fans can't ask for much more from a new head coach and new players, new system. And it used to be Ben and Darren DeVries, which was always a great battle those two had. And I'm expecting the same energy and fight from the two of McCollum and Jacobson tomorrow. But just want to go through kind of the stats and talk about, like I said, it doesn't matter if one team is number 3 in the conference and the other is 11th. These are going to be battles. The last time out, UNI did handle Drake fairly well. In UNI won 91-77, but Drake ended up getting the last laugh by winning the entire Missouri Valley Conference tournament and going to the NCAA tournament. And Drake has had the upper hand. Won 3 of their last 4 at home since 2020. They're 4-2 at the Knapp Center. UNI, though, leads the all-time series very comfortably, 52-34. Before 2020, Drake lost 7 straight. Those were the games I was going to in high school. From 2015 to 2018, it's the longest losing streak to UNI in Drake school history. And those were the teams that, man, they had so much potential and just did not work out with Ray Giacoletti, who I was really excited about. I mean, you have a guy coming from Gonzaga. Come on, he's going to bring in so many transfers. He's going to turn Drake into Gonzaga, is what my 15-year-old brain thought. And you have a guard like Reed Timmer, who just could score at will. Great defensive player, C.J. Rivers. Jacob Enevold as a big center. It's if you have a 7-foot center in the Missouri Valley, you're usually off, as one of the top teams because there's not many size guys like that to compete, and that just didn't work out as well. But they lost 7 straight to UNI from 2015 to 2018, most in school history. And then to talk about just Ben Jacobson. Ben Jacobson, we've given him praise forever, and he is one of the best coaches. He had so many opportunities to try to leave UNI and move up to a different school, a higher school, something that would probably pay him more and give him more opportunities. But he stayed with UNI, and I respect that a lot. And it was something I was really hoping Darren would do, but he ended up not, and it's all working out for both guys. I mean, you have Darren beating Kansas, you have Darren beating Iowa State, and now you have Ben McCollum, who hasn't skipped a beat, has his team at second in the Missouri Valley. And Ben Jacobson, since 2006, he took over for Greg McDermott, who went to Iowa State for a couple of years before going to Creighton. But in his time with UNI, he's been to the NCAA tournament 4 times, been a 5-time Conference Coach of the Year, only Missouri Valley Conference coach to beat 2 number 1 teams. We remember the classic one against Kansas in 2010, and then in 2015 beat North Carolina. He's also the Missouri Valley Conference winningest head coach in conference-only wins with 195. And in the 117 years that the Missouri Valley Conference has been a thing, he is sitting second all-time in wins. With all those stats, with all those records that he's a part of, and all these great teams, he does not have a great record versus Drake like maybe you would expect after seeing that. He's 23-16 all-time versus Drake, but on the road in Des Moines at the Knapp Center, he's 9-10 versus the Bulldogs. So he's trying to get to 500 wins today, and it's going to be a great game. I mean, I'm excited to watch Titan Anderson. Mitch Muscari has been on lately, so hopefully he continues his hot streak. Bennett Sturts, we know what he can do. And just the big man matchup, too, will be fun to watch in the paint. Lots to really be excited about for tomorrow. On top of, both of these teams, they could be 1-10 in the Missouri Valley Conference, and it would still be a must-watch game just because of this in-state rivalry has that ability. Now, it's been a long time. I don't even know if these two teams have ever really faced off being the bottom feeders of the conference. It always feels like one of these teams, if not both, are top feeders in the conference. So that will do it for today's show. Happy that you guys are joining along. Really getting excited now as we're only little over 24 hours away from tipping off in the Knapp Center versus UNI tomorrow. Tomorrow's show. Here's the big thing I know you've been waiting for. You can drum roll in your car or your office desk. I don't care. Here is the big announcement of who's joining the show. He is a Missouri Valley Conference champion, one of the best offensive players Drake has had of all time, one of the best three-point shooters Drake has had of all time, one of the best defenders Drake has had of all time, Mr. DJ Wilkins, joining the show tomorrow, a player that has won in the Missouri Valley Conference, has played against UNI multiple times in both St. Louis and Des Moines and in the McLeod Center. He is the first guy I've ever interviewed when I stepped foot on campus at Drake, and he was gracious. Still have his phone number, was texting him last night, and very excited to hear what he's been up to since that tough loss to Miami in the NCAA tournament. And also just try to see if he can tell us who haven't been fortunate enough to really play in an in-state rivalry like this of what it truly feels like. And so DJ Wilkins, one of the best of all time at Drake. I will say that with full confidence. There's been a lot of great players. He will always be one of my favorites just because of his defensive effort, the way he bounced back after that ACL tear in 2020, and just a great human as well. So DJ Wilkins joining the Media Row podcast tomorrow. So make sure you join us all at 2 o'clock as we break down. It will be a Drake versus UNI preview tomorrow on Media Row at 2 o'clock.